Okay, Senator French, we are on YouTube.
Very good. Good morning and welcome. I'm Harold French, Senator from District 7. Today, we will be holding a meeting of the State Senate Commerce Committee. Before we get started, I'll read through a checklist to ensure that the meeting that we are holding is in compliance with the right to know law. As chair of the Commerce Committee, I find that due to the state of the emergency declared by the governor as a result of COVID-19 pandemic, in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-4 and its extensions, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. In accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are providing public access to the meeting by telephone, with additional access possible by video and other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the committee and selective legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously in this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously watch and or listen to the meeting on Zoom or YouTube and via phone by following the directions and links provided on the General Court website. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting in the Senate calendar. We are providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem, please email remote-senate@leg.state.nh.us or call 603-271-6931. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Finally, let's start the meeting by taking roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state where they are and if anyone else is in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So we get started with roll call. Senator Bradley.
Excuse me. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I am alone in the room for now.
And where are you, sir?
Oh, I'm sorry. In Karen's house, her rental property in Rockport.
And the rental fee? No. Okay. Senator Susie?
Good morning, everyone. This is Donna Susie. I'm at my home in Manchester and I'm alone.
Senator Gannon?
Senator Bill Gannon, I am in sunny Sandown, New Hampshire. My two kids are Zooming from home today. I don't expect them to walk through the room, though.
And I'm Harold French, Senator from District 7, and I'm broadcasting live from my home in Canterbury, and I'm alone. So we'll get started. We'll open up with Senator Bradley's bill, Senate Bill 137. Senator Bradley?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman. Pleased to be here supporting Senate Bill 137. New Hampshire, I'm told, is the only state in the nation that treats tipped wages relative to the minimum wage as a percentage of the minimum wage, as opposed to setting an absolute floor or even ceiling. What we do in New Hampshire is set the tipped wage at 45% of the federal minimum wage. So that's why our tipped wage is $3.27 per hour. If you look at the bill and see, or the legislation, 45% of the applicable minimum wage, 45% of $7.25 is $3.27 per hour. What this bill would do is de-link the percentage of the tipped wage from the federal minimum wage. This is important because there, as everybody knows, is a significant amount of discussion in Washington about raising the federal minimum wage, and that would have a harmful impact on a lot of hospitality businesses in particular, but others such as cigar bars or secondary game operators, which are included in the amendment that I would ask the committee to consider 0700. It adds those categories of people that are normally tipped wage employees. Tipped wage employees in New Hampshire, generally speaking, earn somewhere in the range of $18 to $20 an hour, and linking by a percentage the minimum wage to the tipped provisions would dramatically increase the tipped wage from its current $327 right now. So if, for instance, the minimum wage were set at $10 per hour, the tipped wage would go to $4.50. In Washington, there's a lot of discussion about a minimum wage of $15 an hour. That would more than double the tipped wage in New Hampshire, raising it to $6.75. And I think that you will hear testimony today that it will have a very harmful impact on the hospitality industry and could well harm the very employees that would see potentially reduced tips as a result of an increase in the minimum wage. So I would ask the committee to vote ought to pass on Amendment 700 and move forward with it. The one thing I would, if you look at the bill, because the amendment just deals with Section 1, I think it's really important to see on lines 12 and 13 of the bill, the contingency language that this change that I'm proposing would only take effect if the federal minimum wage is increased from what it is today. So if nothing changes, there's really no need to change our 45% tipped wage. But given the discussion about increasing the minimum wage, especially to $15 an hour, would have I think, a harmful impact on the hospitality industry, other potential industries, and in fact on the very employees that the minimum wage is supposed to help. So thank you, Mr. Chair. Happy to take questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Cameron, we have other speakers today.
We do. The first speaker on the list is Henry Vayu. Henry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, committee. For the record, my name is Henry Vayu, and I'm here on behalf of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association, and want to thank Senator Bradley for bringing the bill forward. And it's largely being brought forward because of what is happening on the federal level. I think we all expect that there will be a minimum wage increase. Obviously, it's not going to be part of the COVID package. It'll probably be discussed on its own in a separate bill at some point. But the House and Senate, and then I think the president will sign an increase. Where it will end up, whether it's $15, $12, whatever, I think that remains to be seen. But I think there's a very good chance that on the federal level, the minimum wage is going to be increased. And what this bill will do is address the part of the issue that uniquely applies to tipped employees. And it basically would keep the tip wage where it is right now. For the hourly workers in restaurants, you can't find someone to work for less than $12. So obviously it's less of a concern for the hourly workers that aren't receiving tips. But if the minimum wage was to go up to $15, the tip wage would basically more than double, which would be quite a blow to restaurants. I was talking with Tom Boucher the other day. He has great New Hampshire restaurants, and we're talking like $500,000. So it would have a significant impact. The bill is kind of modeled on bills that we've seen over the past couple of years that sort of delink it along with an increase in the minimum wage. So this will only happen, as Senator Bradley pointed out, if the feds do increase the minimum wage. If nothing happens on the federal level, we'll keep the current law that we have today. It's really just to address and respond to what we expect to happen on the federal level. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Gannon.
Hi, Mr. Vega. Good morning. Thanks for calling in. Question for you, and I think you've told me this on other occasions, just for my knowledge, how many people are getting tipped wage and how many are getting minimum wage?
We've inquired at Employment Security to try to get those numbers. There are, I think, 40,000 people employed in the industry. What the breakup is, I would say at least half. There are a lot of people that work the front of the house, versus the back of the house. So I'd say at least half.
Thank you.
Senator Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Vayu. Could you tell me what the minimum wage, what the tipped wage is for our surrounding states?
It's higher. It is higher. I know it's higher. I don't have off the top of my head what it is in Maine, Massachusetts, and Vermont, but I do know it's higher. Yeah.
And one more follow-up question, if I may.
Yeah.
Not only is it higher, I believe Senator Bradley said in his testimony, they don't do it as a percentage. Do you know if those states just simply set their minimum wage number?
Yeah, I was looking, so the U.S. Department of Labor, I went to that site. They have a chart that lists what the tip wage and how it's structured in each state. And New Hampshire was the only one that had it as a percentage of the minimum. So those states have an absolute number, which provides an opportunity for the legislature anytime it wants to change the minimum. It can also change the absolute number. So, the New Hampshire legislature would still have the opportunity to address what the tip wage should be. But the value of putting an absolute number is it's New Hampshire that decides what the tip wage should be, because if the federal government changes the tip wage, the way it's structured now, our tip wage would go up based upon decisions that are made, in DC rather than decisions that are made up here. So that's another reason why we prefer it to be an absolute number.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Vayu.
Thank you.
Cameron.
Okay, the next person on my list is Viola Catosimi, Viola, you should be able to unmute yourself. Oh, it looks like you're unmuted for a second there, and then there you go. Viola, are you there? It looks like you're on the phone. If you dial *6, that should make sure you're unmuted on the Zoom platform. Okay, Senator French, I will go to the next person and then we can come back to Viola and see if she's able to unmute.
Great.
Okay, the next person on my list is Curtis Berry. Curtis, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Berry. How are you?
Terrific. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I believe I'm speaking to an amendment Senator Bradley has brought in. He referenced the inclusion of cigar bars. So first of all, my name is Curtis Barry. I'm here this morning on behalf of the Cigar Association of New Hampshire, which is a coalition of 5 owners of retail cigar shops with 11 locations among them, and 1 manufacturer that's based here in New Hampshire. Among them, they have 4 of 5 cigar bar licenses, which, as you know, came into existence, was enacted in 2009, long after the establishment of this statute, which lists out the type of establishments that are eligible to pay the tipped wage. So cigar bars, as you can imagine, employ bartenders who are tipped employees. As you also know, they don't serve food. They're not tipped based on that, but typically they serve fairly high-end spirits and other high-end adult beverages. So the bartenders are typically tipped, but they also then face similar economic pressures relative to a potential increase, significant increase in the minimum wage, just like other tipped employees of other establishments. So we would ask the committee to look favorably upon inclusion of cigar bars as licensed by RSA 178 in the list of establishments allowed to offer the tipped wage. Happy to answer questions to the best of my ability. And I thank you again for the opportunity.
Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cameron?
Okay, I see Viola has her hand raised, so let's go back to her. Viola, you should be able to unmute yourself. All right, it looks like you're unmuted.
Any questions from the committee? No. Try someone else, Cameron.
Okay. The next person on my list is Tristan McLean. Tristan. All right, I'm not seeing Tristan on the list. I believe that's everyone I have signed up other than Viola, who we can't seem to unmute.
Try once more with her, would you please?
Okay. Viola, again, it looks like you're on the phone. If you dial *6, that should unmute you in Zoom. All right, it's showing up that you're unmuted. Can you try to talk?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm so sorry I don't know what's happening, but good morning, members of the Senate committee. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. For the record, my name is Viola Kasime, and I'm representing the Grind State Organizing Project, which is a grassroots organization that works towards a more just world. And I'm here to express our opposition for SB 137. I recently looked at an analysis from the National Women's Law Center that indicates that 79.3% of tipped workers in New Hampshire are women. The poverty rate of women in tipped occupations is at around 11.3%. We know that women are overrepresented in the tipped industry, not just restaurants, but in general. And they are most likely to be living in poverty, and really, which leaves them vulnerable to both economic security and sexual harassment. We also know that from that study that I referenced, the National Women's Law Center, they talk about 12.9% of the tipped workers being women of color in New Hampshire. And so we know that tipped wages have really kept women and people of color, especially in poverty, and really increased the income inequality. Tipped occupations in particular, if you're working full-time, year-round, you're more likely to be paid less than a man, 82 cents for every dollar men are paid. We know that there's a wage gap that exists in the tipped industry between races. So if you're a Black waitress, for instance, you're less likely to make more money than Latinx waitress and the white waitress. That's the reality. And so I'm just referencing these facts because we know that as a state, we should be really aiming for policies that are actually going to make people's lives better. I just feel like SB 137 will be taking us backwards, really. And what we should be doing here is ensuring that workers can thrive in the state, that businesses are thriving, because we know that the tip industry, as workers have more money, they're spending that money in the economy. We've heard about that. And so I just want to urge the committee to make sure that we are really advancing policies that are going to help workers, not really going backwards. So I want to ask the committee to ITL this bill. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your comments today.
Okay, Senator French, that was everyone I had signed up. However, there are 2 hands raised. The first hand is Rick Newman.
Okay.
Rick, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. I thought I signed up. Evidently, I must have done it wrong. But I am Rick Newman. I'm here representing the New Hampshire Charitable Gaming Operators Association. I represent 13 of the 16 charity gaming facilities in the state. We have over 500 employees, and we're here in support of the amendment to Senate Bill 137 that would place dealers at these establishments as tipped employees. As you probably all know, this job category is a very new job category. It was really created by the legislature in 2006 when charity gaming as we know it today was created. What we have come to understand over the last 15 years is these employees are, definitely are tipped employees. I mean, they currently get $7.25 an hour. And in addition to that, they receive substantial tips at the smaller rooms. It averages between $14 to $18 an hour. At the busier rooms on the southern tier, you could be $25 to $30 an hour. Those are real numbers, and they actually go higher than that at different times of the year. This amendment would keep that number for the statutory minimum at $7.25 in the event the federal minimum wage is raised. And I would one important point that I'd like you to consider is keep in mind that at charity gaming facilities, the revenue that we can generate is really regulated by the legislature. And currently we have a cap of a $10 wager. We can't increase that wager in order to offset additional costs for wages should the minimum wage go up. So we would ask you to support the amendment that will put us into the category of tipped employees and but we're not asking to lower the number that they get now. They would keep the current $7.25 minimum, and then obviously if they don't make that, it would be made up. But believe me, they far exceed that number in tips.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Okay, Senator French, the last hand I have raised is Rudolph Ogden. Rudolph, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to bring up one issue for people's...
Could you announce your name and who you represent, please?
Apologies. My name is Rudy Ogden, Deputy Commissioner for the New Hampshire Department of Labor.
Great, thank you.
No, thank you. I just wanted to offer one piece of information for additional context. As Senator Bradley indicated, it looks as though the most recent minimum wage raise that was considered at the federal level, that has gone down. I would just bring up that in the context of that initiative, there was an idea of ultimately phasing out the federal tip credit. That's something important to keep in mind. Federally, currently, individual employers are allowed to pay tipped employees $2.13 an hour. Again, when they were talking about raising the minimum wage to $15, as part of that, they were looking to phase out the tip credit. And the only reason I bring that up is if they pass federally a minimum wage law raising the minimum wage again, and they also couple it with this phasing out of the tip credit, one thing we would want to be aware of is that our employers would have to at least be paying what the federal FLSA allows if they're covered by FLSA. So I apologize if I'm not explaining that clearly, but I just want to point out that I wouldn't want to introduce confusion that if there is a federal law that says in 2 months that, the minimum wage is now 15, I understand the intent of this bill, but we would not want a scenario where employers in New Hampshire covered by FLSA are paying $327 and they're actually not meeting what the feds would require. So I just bring that up. I did talk to individuals in the Hospitality Lobbying Association. They said that their understanding is that might not happen at the federal level, but it's something to be aware of. So I just bring it up for consideration.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thanks for testimony.
Okay, Senator French, that is everyone I had signed up to speak, and there are no hands raised at this time.
Very good. Then I'll close this hearing on Senate Bill 137. And we'll open a hearing on Senate Bill 136 by our very own Senator Susie. And she's with us to introduce it. Go ahead, Senator.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow committee members. Great to be with you this morning to once again talk about an issue that I am passionate about and have worked on for a number of years. This morning, I am asking each and every one of you to do what New Hampshire hasn't done in 14 years. Raise our minimum wage, give people a raise, and most of all, stimulate our economy. Since 2010, we have let Washington decide what our minimum wage should be. And as you heard from testimony from the earlier bill, there's been a lot of discussion. There are a lot of concerns. But in 2010, we abdicated our responsibility. Although we have fine representatives in Washington and they're going to make a decision on a minimum wage bill there, it's our job as New Hampshire legislators to do exactly what Mr. Vayu asked us to do on the tipped wage, and that's let New Hampshire decide what the wages should be. There's a real perception, and I think a real concern, that we don't value workers the way the other New England states do. All of our New England states have wages of $10.50 or more, and most have had increases since those wages were set. I just want to talk about our 3 border states very quickly. Massachusetts, $13.50 an hour. Tipped wage, $5.50 an hour. Vermont, $11.75 an hour. Tipped wage, $5.88. Maine, $12.50 an hour. $6.08 for a tipped wage. Each of those communities draw people from New Hampshire every day to work in service industries, and they're paying them a higher wage. Now, the question always becomes, here in New Hampshire, what are we actually paying for wages? Well, once again, my good friend, Mr. Vayu, who's also a proud Trinity High School grad, told us that the people who work in restaurants, they can't find people to work for less than $12 an hour. I would argue, Mr. Chairman, the vast majority of competitive businesses in this state pay people well in excess of $10 an hour. And as you know, my bill has a more modest increase. It starts with an increase to $10 an hour, which you will hear from business after business, whether they be small or large, is actually on a very low end of the scale. Many have to pay more. I've even heard the quote from large businesses, we can't hire somebody that will even show up for less than $10 an hour. We are paying more. So to suggest that the wage I'm proposing will create an enormous burden or will cause job loss or will create wage compression, it doesn't reflect what is the reality of our current economy. But let me just say one more thing about the value of work and the dignity of work. people want to have a job. It's the desire and the goal of people to support themselves, to support their families. And there are many ways that we try to advance and increase the amount of money we earn. But on the front end, if you assume a person who works 40 hours a week at the minimum wage for the entire year with no time off, that person is making at $7.25 an hour, $15,000 a year. Now, even if they take on an extra job, that is below all of our federal poverty guidelines. If you're living here in New Hampshire, it's not enough for an individual to live on, never mind support a family. During this time in particular with the pandemic, people have said, well, why would you want to increase the wage? I would suggest to you that with vaccines and with the rate at which we are vaccinating our people and the work that we're doing as legislators to work on recovering our economy here in New Hampshire from the pandemic, this is the perfect time because people are still looking for workers. We are a state, in part because of our age, that struggles to find young people to assume these new jobs. So now more than ever, as part of our recovery, is the time to increase the minimum wage. And as I said earlier, New Hampshire isn't an island. When every bordering state has wages far in excess of what ours are, now is the time, Mr. Chairman. Now is the time for us as New Hampshire elected officials to do what New Hampshire knows is best for the people of this state, for our businesses, for our economy. And I ask each and every one of you today to consider this piece of legislation, Senate Bill 136, and finally vote to increase the minimum wage. Thanks so much, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. Any questions besides Senator Gannon? Then Senator Gannon.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Susie, for taking my questions. Just a couple of questions. One, you were talking about people working 40 hours a week, making $7.25. Is that a real number out there of people making that? Do you have like an idea of how many people are working 40 hours, making $7.25?
I don't have the exact number. I know there are some. There are some making less than $8 an hour, but they are very few. And more importantly, as I said, someone who's working that many hours and who qualifies for every form of public assistance, essentially what we're being asked to do is provide corporate welfare because we are subsidizing a business that is unwilling to pay a fair wage.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks. So I look at my kids, I have high school kids, they all started at minimum wage jobs at Dunkin' Donuts, at the mall, at stores. Within a couple months, the Dunkin' Donuts had them up to 12, the mall had them up to 9. Doesn't the economy and the free market take care of it and pay workers a much higher amount and this is just more of a starting wage for young kids?
That's a very good question, Senator, and thanks so much for that. I actually talked to Dunkin' Donuts franchise owners in the western part of our state and the Lakes region. I excluded the Manchester area because I thought the wages would be higher. They said they can't find anyone to show up for 10. So most of them pay at least 10 in the door. They are struggling to find people. There are some small pockets of our state where they can pay less than that, but most of the competitive parts of our state, because in particular, our borders all have double-digit minimum wages, really struggle and compete to find people to work in those service industries for anything less than a double-digit wage.
One more follow-up. It's just probably me. It's
Of
early.
course, go ahead.
We started early today. So again, with all the examples, even your ones in Keene, aren't they really, the free market's taking care of the problem? It's raising the wage. They pay you $10 or $12 to come in. So is there really a problem that you need to fix here?
Well, Senator, once again, I would say that it's it's in New Hampshire's interest for New Hampshire to set a wage and not wait for the federal government to do it for us. I would also say that there are a number of labor laws that have been set over the years to ensure that there are basic minimums in wages, basic minimums in providing safety, basic minimums in the number of hours worked and whether or not someone gets overtime. There are protections. There are a series of protections that over many, many years people fought to enshrine in our statutes to ensure that there was fair treatment of workers throughout our state and throughout our country.
Thank you, Senator Susie.
Sure.
Senator, I have just one question. Have you ever run the numbers on someone making $12 an hour? Are they still eligible for assistance in the state?
They may be eligible for some form of assistance, but I'm not certain of that, Senator French. I would have to check. And it would also depend whether you were talking about an individual supporting themselves or someone who's also supporting children, because I think there still would be eligibility for children.
Right, okay. So they wouldn't be losing out on assistance if we raise their wages minimally. Is that correct?
I don't believe so, but I would need to run those numbers and I would be happy to try to get that for you by the end of the day, Senator French.
I actually would like to know. Thank you. Any other questions? Senator Gannett?
Just one more question, Senator Susie. Thanks for taking it. Is this number like under of people getting the minimum wage? The numbers I'm hearing are like 7,500 to 12,000. Like, so certainly only a fraction of less than 1% of our workforce making this. Am I correct or are my numbers off?
I don't know where those numbers came from, Senator Gann, so I can't comment on them. I don't have a specific number. I did try to pull some numbers, but I don't have a specific number. So I don't want to give you an inaccurate answer.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And Senator, the only reason we're peppering you with questions is because I started early and I want a reason for starting early. So thank you for indulging us.
Well, I'm so happy to assist you, Senator.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your testimony today.
Thank you.
Cameron, do we have anyone else wishing to speak?
We do. The first person on my list is Tristan McLean, who again, I do not see in the Zoom list. The next person on my list is the Reverend Dr. Gail Kinney. Let me see here. Okay, Gail, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you so much, Senator French and members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before you today. For the record, my name is Gail Kinney. I am a pastor with the United Church of Christ in New Hampshire. The UCC is the largest Protestant denomination in the state of New Hampshire. For those not familiar with the sort of the United Church of Christ name, we are those congregational churches that dot the landscape in New Hampshire from Coos to the sea. And I am speaking not just on behalf of myself, but also on behalf of the United Church of Christ as a whole in New Hampshire, the New Hampshire Conference. And I am a part of the state conference economic justice ministry team. But in addition to the United Church of Christ, I will say that there are faith leaders from multiple traditions in the state of New Hampshire who support reinstating a New Hampshire minimum wage and reinstating it as a wage that will allow for basic survival of individuals and families in the state of New Hampshire. So there were churches and faith leaders sort of, again, across traditions that were absolutely appalled and shocked in 2011 when the legislature chose to wipe the minimum wage statute off the books. And so I think initially, quite frankly, I think the assumption was that, well, that will be fixed in subsequent years. And then when it wasn't again in 2013 or 2012, 2013, the United Church of Christ itself came together and passed a statewide resolution calling upon church leaders across the state to talk to you folks and to say it is a moral imperative to put a statute, a minimum wage statute, back on the books in New Hampshire, and then to have it be a wage that will allow people to survive without having to then underwrite folks with public assistance. And currently, that is not the case for low-wage workers in New Hampshire. Taxpayers are subsidizing employers all over the state, and not just for those who pay $7.25, but for the several thousand that do, but $8.25, $9, even $10 an hour still requires substantial subsidies so that people can have a roof over their head and food on the table and can support a child. And this is seriously problematic. So in addition to the resolution that came from the United Church of Christ, a number of faith leaders, I think it was around the same time, maybe in the 2014-2015 timeframe, when the legislature was considering this again, what to do about a minimum wage in the state of New Hampshire. We held a major breakfast at the church, just St. Paul's Church is just very near the State House. And I would say about 100 people from every tradition, faith tradition you could imagine, came together in that breakfast and talked about the need to raise a minimum wage. And I remember, and we were talking about it from a moral imperative, that every faith tradition just calls on society to support work and to support workers, and that workers should be able to survive on the wages that they make. And I just remember one legislator who came to the breakfast who was Catholic, who was listening to this and then said all of a sudden, had always voted against a minimum wage. And then he said, I realize now that my catechism, my Catholic teachings told me that you need to pay the laborer his or her due. And then went back and said, you know, this consideration of the moral imperative has caused me to change my vote. So I just wanted to share that. But I wanted to just really quickly address two myths. The first myth is that the minimum wage was always supposed to be a training wage or an entry-level wage or a kid wage. And that is not the case. When the concept of a minimum wage was originally just created and established and thought about, it was meant to be a wage on which the wage earner could survive. Not a wage for children, not a wage for a trainee, but a wage for a worker, a trained worker who was giving his or her all to the job. And the second myth is that the market will provide, and that we don't need to worry about this. We don't even need to put a wage floor in our statutes because the market will take care of it. Well, I will just say that the market provides except when it does not provide. So there are still workers in New Hampshire who are making in the $7 range, in the $8 range, in the $9 range, who are living in poverty. And so there are the working poor in New Hampshire. And if the market provided, we would not have the working poor. If the market provided, we as taxpayers would not have to subsidize employers, big multi-billion-dollar multinational employers who are paying less than a survival wage in the state of New Hampshire. So again, the market is not always providing, and it is not providing for all dedicated full-time workers in the state of New Hampshire. So again, I just want to close with the sense that that there are numerous biblical passages that in one way or another say, it is really important to pay the laborer his or her due. It doesn't say pay the laborer so that he or she will continue to live in poverty. It says pay fair wages to laborers. Now, I just want to say, in my view, this bill is not enough, but this bill is a start, and it's time for New Hampshire to declare that there is a moral imperative for a wage floor in the state of New Hampshire. And so therefore, I would really implore you to think at this time in 2021, please vote out Senate Bill 136 ought to pass. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Reverend. Would you take some questions?
Sure.
Do you happen to know what the minimum income is before someone is no longer eligible for government assistance?
Well, Senator, I think as Senator Susie indicated, that there are multiple levels on which the the eligibility for assistance is gauged, and it depends on the size of the family, whether children are in the family, and there are multiple levels of assistance, anything from heating assistance to what we know in the vernacular as food stamps, or housing assistance. So again, there are various levels of eligibility. And I will say that I don't have at my fingertips the HHS standards for who gets what at what point, at what size family, but I'm sure that there are people who crunch those numbers who can provide them to you or to the committee in a timely way.
So is it tied to the federal poverty line?
Well, I can say that I am not an expert in New Hampshire regulations as they are administered, probably primarily by Health and Human Services. There may be other entities involved as well. There are some that are gauged to the federal poverty level or a percentage beyond the federal poverty level, knowing full well that people who are making just at the poverty level absolutely cannot survive, cannot put a roof over their head in the state of New Hampshire or food on their table, just given for roof over their head, given the rental rates in the state of New Hampshire. We have good statistics that tell you need to be working 2 or 3 minimum wage jobs in order to pay for rent across the state. So, but there are just in a number of entities, if you make 75%, above the minimum wage or something like that, you're eligible for X, Y, or Z, and it does vary. But I'm sure that folks can provide you with the information that you would like or that you're asking about.
Yeah, Senator Susie is going to get it for me, I think. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Cameron?
Okay, the next person on my list is Kathy Staub. Kathy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. Thank you very much for hearing my testimony. My name is Kathy Staub. I live in Manchester, and I'm part of a group called Raise Up New Hampshire. And I am here to say, yes, we should raise the minimum wage. The minimum wage is a tried and true method for providing stimulus. And because when low wage workers get more money in their pocket, they're going to go out and they're going to spend all of it. And that will stimulate the economy, because if they are able to buy a coffee at the gas station, then the gas station makes more money. Maybe they have their floor fixed. And that, provides business for someone who's a contractor. So it trickles up by providing money for people at the bottom. We have this $7.25 minimum wage sends a message that the state of New Hampshire really does not value its workers. As you've been told, the states around us all have much higher minimum wages. So if someone were choosing where to live, would you go live in a state where the minimum wage was $7.25 an hour if you were just starting out, or would you go to a state where the minimum wage was $13.50 an hour, which is what it is in Massachusetts? We have a high cost of living in our state. People are making New Hampshire wages, but trying to pay rents that are similar to in Massachusetts. During the period that our minimum wage has been $7.25, where I live in Manchester, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment has gone from $1,000 a month to over $1,400 a month. And then, in most parts of the state, in order to rent a 2-bedroom apartment, if you were a single parent, for example, you would need to make at least $20 an hour. I have a lot of statistics. I apologize, I haven't sent my testimony to you at this time. I'm still trying to format it, but I will be sending that along to you later. I'd also like to say that I'm concerned about the reduction of the tipped wage from 45% to 35% of the minimum wage. We hear that tipped workers are doing well. We've heard that they make $18 an hour, but when I looked at the Office of Employment Security ELMI reports, It said that, let me pull up my data here. It said that there are 12,390 waiters and waitresses that work in the state. The entry-level wage is $8.76 an hour. The median wage is $9.97 an hour, which is much lower than most people have indicated here today. So the data says it tells a different story. There are 4,000 bartenders. Their median wage is around $9.73 an hour, and 2,600 hairdressers with a median wage of $11.60 an hour, all of which are less than $12 an hour. We've heard that raising the minimum wage at this time will hamper businesses, but we've seen that the tipped wage is actually different in different states. Ours is more than $1 higher than the national, and then the states around us. Maine, it's $6.08 an hour. In Massachusetts, it's over $5 an hour. And yet those states with that higher tipped wage still manage to have a thriving restaurant industry. So I don't think that you can make that argument. The other thing that I wanted to say was that, I understand that restaurants are having a very difficult time right now. And I also understand that the federal COVID relief package is going to include a $25 billion for restaurants to help them recover. So I don't see a need to place the burden of the recovery on tipped workers. As you heard, 80% of them are women, and making an average of $9.97 an hour, or a median. Half of them are making less than that. So I don't think we need to place the burden of the recovery on these people. The other thing is that I heard some information about the Raise the Wage Act. Let me just keep flipping back and forth here. Okay, I'm going to send all this data to you. The Raise the Wage Act will increase the minimum wage to $9.50 an hour if it is passed, and then it will gradually go up to $15 by 2025. At the same time, they're going to address the tipped wage with the intention of gradually phasing it out by 2027. So in 2021, if the minimum wage were to go to $9.50, then the tipped wage would go to $4.95, and then $6.95, $8.95, until it's gradually catches up with the $15 minimum wage in 2027. So that's as I look at the efforts, these provisions to have a locally determined minimum wage for tipped workers, I wonder, how that would be, how that would be possible if the federal minimum wage for tipped workers goes up to $4.95. Because, and I also wonder if the tipped wage, if 80% of tipped workers in the state of New Hampshire are women, by creating this provision, by making these laws that have a separate wage for people who are predominantly of a certain class of individuals, in this case, women, could that be considered discriminatory? Because so many of the tipped wage workers are women. So those are just some things that, and I have a bunch of data that I will pass on to you, along with some links to, where I got this information. A couple of years ago, Yannette Lathrop from the National Employment Law Project came and testified at a House hearing, and she did a lot of data analysis, because that's her job, about the cliff that Senator French was asking about. I'm going to see if I can dig that up and forward that to you as well. The way that it works is that as you make more money, sometimes you'll get less money, in terms of SNAP benefits and so forth, and housing, if you've got a voucher, it's 30% of your income. So if your income goes up, then the amount you have to pay in rent will also go up. But I can see if I will find that for you, and I will send that along with the links to the data that I used here. So yes, I'm absolutely 100% in favor of raising the minimum wage. I think, raising the minimum wage would be like hanging a sign out that says New Hampshire values workers. Come here, work, have a good life, be able to afford rent and food, and a car payment and student loans. But I do, worry about these efforts to either maintain the tipped wage or lower the tipped wage, because many of the folks who are working in those jobs are not doing as well as some others. So yeah, if I would take questions, if I can answer them, I will. And other than that, I will be sending along, links and other information that I've been looking at.
Great, thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Senator Gannon?
Hi, Kathy. Thanks for taking my question. Just an observation. You were talking like hairdressers making $9.90. I got to send my wife there because I'm spending a ton more than that on hairdressing every month with my daughters and my wife. Is that the number I heard from you? $9.90?
Yeah, actually, let me pull that up. Hairdressers, the entry level wage is $8.91 an hour. The average is $14.79 an hour. The median, which means half make more, half make less, is $11.60, and an experienced wage is $17.73 an hour. Now you have to consider that some of the folks that are included in that are people who work at places like Supercuts. So I actually had a conversation with a woman who was in her 80s, who was a hairdresser. She lived in, I believe, Kittery, Maine, or York, Maine. And occasionally she left her work, but occasionally they would call her into work at Supercuts. And they had a place in Maine. And at the time, the minimum wage there was $9 an hour. And but sometimes she would be called into work in Portsmouth. So she said that when she would go in, if it was a really slow day, if nobody came in, if she worked in Portsmouth, she would get $7.75 for that time. And if she worked in Maine, she would be getting $9 for that time when nobody came in, because the law requires you to make up everything between the tipped wage and the minimum wage if someone is working. So that's, at high-end salons, yes, people are doing very well, but there are a lot of people who are just starting out or not working in high-end salons. They're at Supercuts and they're counting on volume. And if they don't get volume, they don't get money.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Cameron?
Okay, the next person on my list is Emmett Soldati. Emmett, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman French and the committee, and thank you, Senator Susi, for this bill. Here to talk today in my experience as a small business owner and the owner of a couple restaurants over the last decade in Somersworth over on the Maine border, very small and somewhat economically depressed community. And I really, really appreciate the perspective of small business owners, in particular restaurant owners, that they take to running their business, meeting the bills necessary to operate it. When I first opened my first restaurant 10 years ago, there was not a lot of capital I had at my disposal. And, folks the couple of employees I had were making probably $8 an hour plus tips. And I recognized the real challenges because I wasn't making much more than that either. But I also recognize and have learned over the last 10 years that the fundamental and critical piece of my success is to make sure that my employees, whether they are teenagers or whether they are the sole source of income for their home do have a livable wage and are able to bring their all to the establishment. And so I very much take seriously the challenges when it goes into improving and changing how a business operates. But I also want to put to the committee that business owners, entrepreneurs are very good planners. And that when you have bills that really give us a runway to improve our employees' pockets, that we can work with those rules. The challenges that I have faced now as a business and restaurant over 10 years is a lot of times we are expected to go it alone. That we ask individual businesses to raise their wages. And I'm proud to say over the last 10 years, I have raised my base wage to a livable wage. But we cannot expect individual businesses to have to make those changes and go it alone when instead we have legislation that can lift all boats, so that if I make decisions about increasing my payroll and maybe I change some cost calculations, maybe I change my inventory, maybe I change my prices, I recognize that every restaurant, whether it's another small independently owned one or a franchise chain, also has to address that same pressure. And I think at the end of the day, in a place like Somersworth, a community like Somersworth, our biggest threat is not my bottom line. It's trying to get more people in the door. It is trying to grow my revenue. It is trying to increase activity for my restaurant. And I recognize, and others have spoken to this, that increasing the minimum wage is a mandate to keep more money locally. Because some large cafe and restaurant chains that exist in Somersworth or nearby, they can have different levers to control their prices and their marketing and their wages. Us small business owners do not. If we raise the minimum wage and everyone is subject to improving the $1, $2, $3 an hour that their employees make, it means more folks in my community are able to patron my business and patron other businesses. And so a lot of times the way I look and understand these bills now as a business owner is this is all about balance. I think that this is a bill that is good for restaurants, that recognizes that we can have more money distributed and support the journey of restaurant owners, whether they don't have a background in business, as I didn't 10 years ago, to large corporations that say there is a minimum standard for folks in your communities to have access to a quality of life that includes participating in the Main Street economy. So as a business owner, as a restaurant owner that has evolved and changed and seen an opportunity that this legislation can support all workers, I support this bill. I hope that you pass this. And I would just sort of say, as I was listening, and I know Senator Gannon, you had the question about who will this affect? And I don't have a background in economic data, but the 2017 census data does show in New Hampshire, 15% of New Hampshire households live under $25,000 a year. 15% of households bring in less than $12 an hour for the entire household. So I don't believe that this is about a handful of teenagers or a handful of folks. This is really about telling New Hampshire what we believe quality of life looks like, and that we want more people able to participate in their local economy. And from this one restaurant and business owner, I strongly support it, and I hope you will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank God. Senator Gannon?
Thanks, Emmett, for taking my question. Just a real quick one. So you realize we're in the pandemic, your volume has to be way down. You know, you have minimum seating spreads. You know, all the dining people can't afford to go out right now. Do you not fear a little bit that if you raise, you're going to have to pay more? Ultimately, when your main overhead is probably one of your main is your pay to the workers, aren't you going to have to raise the price up? And now you're already short with the pandemic of customers. Is this not going to decrease your traffic, your foot traffic in the store?
Well, a couple things. First, one of the things that I mentioned is I think business owners are good planners. You know, they can set a pro forma. They can look ahead and say, 3 years is a lifetime for a small independently owned business. This bill does not say tomorrow in the middle of the pandemic, you need to double your base payroll. It says we recognize that if we want to strengthen New Hampshire's economy, we need to strengthen it from the bottom. We need to strengthen it from the ground. And we want restaurant owners prepared to do that. I think this pandemic proved, last March when folks had to shutter and close, and I was one of those, we were the first people to act and adapt and respond to rules and regulations that were immediate that came from the governor's office. If you tell restaurants, we believe that the minimum standard of living for all people means that they can afford housing, afford food, and to provide for their families, our restaurants and business owners are going to be the first people to get on board. Give them a bill that they can work with to build into their pricing and build into their inventory and their sourcing and their marketing. Many businesses, as mentioned, have already been doing this. This means anyone that is ignoring or not paying attention or not concerned about raising the wage needs to get on board to put more money locally. I think if everyone is talking about recovery, everyone is talking about reopening, part of reopening needs to be, how are we going to sustainably provide for those at the bottom of the wage spectrum so that we don't need to always continue to subsidize through other forms, that we actually can have an economy that works for people, whether they're the employers or the employees. And I think this bill is a good example of that.
Quick follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
Again, thanks for talking to me, Emmett. My question, you said you're paying everyone a living wage. So if a high school senior's coming in and he's washing your dishes, what are you paying him?
Right now, $15 an hour. We got through tips. In 2019, we were paying, our minimum was $9 an hour plus tips, which is about $11.50. We are now up to 15. And that's the economy in Somersworth, New Hampshire. I both see that we have to do it given how expensive housing is. The cost of living has gone up. But we also have a business that, we recognize when we are providing for our folks, that improves our local economy. That makes Somersworth a place where more people are shopping, and we can get everyone to there. This is a bill, which is less than, my current minimum, that helps other communities and other businesses plan to get there too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony today.
Thanks.
Cameron?
The last person that I have signed up to speak is Samantha Fillmore. Samantha, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, I am. Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman French and members of the committee for holding a hearing today on Senate Bill 136. My name is Samantha Fillmore. I'm a state government relations manager at the Heartland Institute. We're a 37-year-old national nonprofit think tank, and we're primarily focused around a free market mission. I will not belabor you with all of the details exactly concerning what minimum wage laws do. You know that I have submitted written testimony to you. I know we're all very busy today. I simply wanted to draw your attention to a recent study by the Congressional Budget Office titled "The Effects on Employment and Family Income of Increasing the Federal Minimum Wage." It examines the increases in minimum wage of what it would be to $10, $12, and $15 per hour by 2025. And it has pretty much the effects which you would think. There are a significant number of employees who do see a boost in wage. However, it's at the cost of pushing millions of workers out of the job, hitting small businesses the hardest. According to Yelp, 60% of United States businesses have closed since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, and most of these are looking to be shut down permanently. More specifically to your constituents, officials with Yelp said that 449 businesses in New Hampshire temporarily or permanently closed between March 1st and July 10th of last year. That's not accounting for the interim time between July and now. I understand the laudable efforts and effects that minimum wage increases are intended to do and create. However, in a pandemic world, now is not the time for small businesses. Furthermore, failed businesses do not pay property taxes, income taxes, sales taxes, and all the other dozens of licensing and regulatory fees that the New Hampshire government relies on for revenue. So facing revenue shortfalls in every state, if you push a small business out of work, the small businesses operating on marginal profits already and that have already faced potentially one of the hardest years to stay alive and stay afloat as a small business. Now, these minimum wage hikes could be what breaks their back. And then that can inversely hurt the state even more. So yes, ultimately arbitrary minimum wage hikes, they're in sync with what's happening at the federal level. However, now is the time to look into small businesses and consider all of the social and economic effects associated with this. Many small businesses, like the small business owner who testified right before me, do pay more than the minimum. And this is simply a matter of insulating liberty and insulating the choice for small business owners and the contract between small business owners and workers, and for them to maintain autonomy over what they think is best for their business and keeping their doors open in the Granite State. So yes, thank you for your time. I have any questions. I'm open to any questions if you have any for me.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee members? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Okay, that is everyone I had signed up to speak. There is one hand raised at this time. It's Henry Vayu. Henry, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Thanks again, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Henry Vayu, here on behalf of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. And I couldn't let the hearing go by without giving a kudos and a shout out to Senator Susie for trying to address the tip wage issue in her bill. It's a different approach than what is in SB 137. It still sets it as a percentage, but I did want to at least give you a shout out and appreciate the effort of trying to do something on the tip wage.
Great. No one else, Cameron?
At this time, I have no one else signed up and there are no hands raised.
Then I'm going to close this hearing on Senate Bill 136. We're going to take a 15-minute break, come back at 10 o'clock to exec, and we've got a lot of bills to exec. We're going to exec all the FN bills and possibly some others while we're at it. I'd like you all to take 15 minutes, have a break, and we'll recess until 10. Thank you.
Aaron, you have any more amendments?
But did he send us a bunch that I haven't looked at?
He just sent a whole slew.
Yeah,
Well,
that-
I asked Senator French, I wondered if it was just easier. Like, I know they're all in the OneDrive, but even I was confused as to what was out there.
Well, it looks like there are multiple amendments on certain bills that are later in time, so we'll figure it out. It's all good. Senator French is in charge. It looks like Senator Kavanaugh has joined us, so that's good.
He has, and he called me too. So he should get on in a few minutes.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Kevin, how you doing?
Good. Sorry I was late.
No problem.
We're just starting, Senator.
An excused absence.
Everyone feel better?
Always feel good during the Commerce Committee, Senator.
Glad to hear it. Senator Bradley, when he gets back, we'll come out of recess.
Am I correct? We only have 2 FN bills?
No, we've got 4.
4?
65, 125, 126, 136, well, actually 5 and 1. Yeah, 4.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's had a page that stuck together.
I'd like to come out of recess now and
Go into executive session?
yes, that would be great.
Second.
We have a motion to go to executive session by Senator Susie and seconded by Senator Gannon. Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes, and I'm in my home in Manchester alone in my house.
thank you for the additional information. Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
and Senator French says yes.
Let's hope that cat doesn't make you a liar. Senator Kavanaugh.
Yeah, right. I'd like to start off with one of my favorites, Senate Bill 65. This bill is for the at-home rape detection and evidence kits. And I thought it was an important piece of legislation to bring forward. I thought it was a mistake of this body to outlaw them before, primarily because 70+% of victims of sexual assault never report it. And I felt that this would give them a sort of empowerment, at least in their own minds, over their assaultant. But we've had some problems with this bill. So do I have a motion on it? Senator Bradley.
Yeah, I would move re-refer, and if I could speak to that motion.
Do we have a second? Senator. Motion
Yeah,
to
thank you very much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I know this is a really controversial bill. I voted last year to ban them. So you might ask, why am I voting to re-refer this bill? I think that let me put it this way. I could not vote to pass this bill in the form it is today. All the victims advocates oppose it. Law enforcement opposes it. The Attorney General's office opposes it. And quite frankly, a word of advice to the company that manufactures these, you should spend more time trying to negotiate with those folks that I just mentioned, law enforcement, victims' rights advocates, the Attorney General's office, and yeah, I said law enforcement, rather than coming to the legislature with a bill to undo what we did last year. And what I mean by negotiation is I think there is merit to the technology of these rape test kits, but the reason for a discussion and negotiation is to make sure that they're admissible, that the chain of command works. And rather than spending the company all their time in the legislature lobbying for this bill, they'd be better advised, and my motion will give them the opportunity, if there's merit to, this kind of test kit, which I think there is, but the other side has a lot of merit too, that a legal case can't be brought if there's not adequate chain of command. So if we pass this motion of re-refer, it gives the company that opportunity to do what they should have done a year ago, as opposed to being in the legislature. I know I'm being harsh on them, but the only other option, in my point of view, would be ITL. And I think, Mr. Chairman, you've outlined why in other states this makes sense, but unfortunately, when you have the array of people opposing it because of the chain of command issues, I don't see how we can go forward. But if there is a re-refer motion, if it passes and the Senate passes it, it does give the company that opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. Any other discussion? Senator Susie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Bradley, I don't think that you're being unusually harsh towards the company. I think that the comments were well stated. I certainly am always open to listening. We all have some great New Hampshire friends who advocate for this legislation. But having said that, this out-of-state company has made representations about all of the various groups that oppose it for very serious and very legitimate reasons. I can't support the re-refer. I think what we did 2 years ago or a year ago was the right thing to do. Whether or not we re-refer this bill, the company has the opportunity to negotiate and to engage and to listen, hopefully listen to people of this state in law enforcement, those who actually advocate for victims, those who are dealing with victims every day on the front lines. And I think it would actually send a more appropriate message to ITL this legislation and let them know that we take this issue very seriously. And if they want to come up with a constructive means by which to work with people in our community, then fine. But I can't support the re-refer at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Anyone else? Seeing none, we have a motion of re-refer by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. We'll take a roll call vote. Senator Bradley?
Yes.
Senator Gannon?
Yes.
Senator Susie?
No.
Senator Kavanaugh?
No.
And Senator French says yes. 3-2, I'll take it out. I'd like to move on to Senate Bill 125, beverage manufacturers. It has a few amendments with it.
Okay, can I go, Harold, or I'm
Yes,
sorry?
please, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So my 106, I should wear glasses, 0657, which the liquor commissioner had given his okay with, and it's supported by the 80 independent brewers. And our one area of disagreement, I think, Senator French, I think all the parties, manufacturers, everyone's on board except for the satellites. So that would be the one thing I'd address with you. So we were asking for one satellite, much as right now the wineries are allowed to have a satellite, just satellite place. LaBelle Vineyards has opened one in Hampstead. So they have the main one towards a little past Manchester there. And now they have one more place, and that's the limit. There's only 2 satellite wineries. People were worried that there were going to be tons of them. It hasn't turned out that way. So it's not really interfering with just Hannaford's. It's not interfering with pubs. It's a very small grouping. And it's people who are, anyone who's going to go to a satellite, it's more of a destination. You're going there to try the thing. If I was up in Rochester, I had my brewery, I have my one satellite allowed. I might pick Portsmouth or Salem, the new malls where you're going to get all these high-end people coming just to expose your product. It's not going to compete with mom and pups trying to have complained that they're afraid it's going to eat into their revenue. It's going to be a destination. You're going to go there, you're going to try the sample, and then hopefully you'll buy it at your Hannaford or your local Packy store. So I don't see, again, there was the distributors and a few others were concerned that it was going to eat at revenue of other places. I see it as a location that you're going to go to uniquely once or twice a year at the most probably, and try a product out. And then if you like it, you're going to ask for it at your Hannaford, at your liquor store, at your local package store. So I don't see the problem with the satellites, but you might address that, Senator French, as I think you do have a problem. I think that's the only issue on the table right now for this bill.
Does anyone have Senator Gannon's amendment?
Could I just ask a question, Mr. Chair? I think there's Senator Gannon's amendment, and then do you also have an amendment later?
I do.
I haven't seen yours, Senator French. I'm sorry. It might have just come over.
Would it be
it was sent
possible
over during break.
one or both up on the screen so that we can see the areas of difference in the amendments? Because it sounds like it's pretty discrete from what Senator Gannon just described. I can pull it up on my own screen, but
I can pull at least one up and then I'll see if I can have both at the same time. I'm not sure how that actually works. Give me 1 second here.
So Harold, I haven't seen your bill, but that's what I was told by the distributors who are the other side, that their problem is still the satellite distribution.
Right, for the nanos.
Yes. And so that's, as far as I know, that would be just something, I think it's not going to hurt anyone else. You may think differently. The distributors may think differently. And so is that your only difference in the bill?
No, there's a couple.
Okay.
Senator Bradley?
Yeah, my understanding is the divergent views are about the satellite location, that there be some minimal production at the satellite location. As I recall, when we authorized satellites for wine, and if you recall, the LaBelle winery in Amherst was behind that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. The agreement at the end of the day was for some small amount of production. So I think if we can point to in the updated amendment, not 657, but Senator French's amendment, where, here it is, 703, where that production in the satellite is, that would be helpful.
That is actually, I think mine deletes it. It would be in section 7.
Yeah, in mine it's 7D. And you might
my amendment deletes all of section 7.
Okay.
Period. It deletes the satellites.
Do you want to speak to why you think the satellites are harmful?
I from what I've understood, they're not necessary because the nanos are very small outlets and don't do enough production really to warrant it.
So their feelings are just like the wineries. It's not going to be, out of the 90 people who are nanos, it may only be a very small percentage. but there are some of them that are a little bigger, and they would like to have the option of being in a high visibility place if they're up in, say, Wolfboro, where nobody ever goes to. Sorry, Senator. That was a joke.
What?
Anyways, no, if you're in we'll just say Rochester, and you're not a yuppie tourist place, you'd love to be on Main Street in Portsmouth and have people exposed to your product. So it's going to be a very de minimis number of people doing this.
So in looking at section 7, and maybe Scott Shire is on the Zoom and he can be recognized, beverage manufacturer retail outlet, that's a satellite, would be an outlet for the sale, sampling, production, or manufacturing or promotion of beverages. So there would be a manufacturing component to any of the licenses above a nano license. I believe that's what the agreement calls for. And maybe if you can bring Scott Shire in.
Yeah, would you, Cameron?
Okay, let me see. I'm not seeing Scott here. No, Scott Shire is not here.
He was more the outlier, Senator Bradley, of the group of nano brewers. I spoke with the representatives, the other ones, and they thought he was one of the few, if any, other than himself, who would want manufacturing at the satellite location, where the others.
Cameron, until Scott Shire comes on, you can pull back up that section that you just had in Senator French's amendment.
So if we go to my amendment on page 3, line 18. Where I've added notwithstanding any other provision of law to the contrary, after brew pub, nano brewery brew pub, I've added wine manufacturer, importer, wholesaler, or retailer.
Okay, that's the direct shipping section.
Right.
So Cam, if you could go down to section 7 again. All right, so I believe that this does what needs to be done in terms of retaining the so-called 3-tier system of manufacture, distribution, and retail. And it does it by that language of sales, sampling, production, or manufacturing and promotion of beverages. So, it's funny, Karen and I went to Portsmouth on Sunday, and Amy LaBelle has a storefront. It was closed, we couldn't go in. It looked great, I have to say, but there is under her satellite license, my understanding is there has to be a minimal amount of production, and we were able to look through the window, and it looked like a retail store, but somewhere in there would have been some minimal production. My understanding with this language, manufacturing could be as small as a home brew kit on the premise of the satellite location. And that would comply with the production standard in this bill, and it would not upset the 3-tier system. So
that's fine then.
And I think it's pretty minimal. And the brewers I talked to yesterday seemed fine with that concept. So
that's good with me then.
All right, you know what, Senator French, I'll move on to pass on your amendment, whatever it is.
Would that also, are you going to move on mine too also later, or?
We need to move on the bill first before we can do the amendment.
Do I have a motion on the bill?
I'll move on to pass.
We have a motion of ought to pass by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon.
Senator French, do we know if anyone from the commission is available to talk about the differences? I know the commission was mentioned as having, I think you spoke with them, but I just wondered.
Cameron, anyone on?
Normally it would be Aiden Moore, and I do not see him on here. And I don't see Chairman Malika. There's someone on the phone. They don't have a name, but I don't, that could be anybody.
Okay.
On my draft, Aiden Moore did help do the draft in writing it up.
So we have a motion of ought to pass.
Cam, can you put Senator French's amendment back up?
That's 703S.
It's
And
up
scroll
right
to
now.
the top again. Okay, so Senator Gannon, this is a replace all amendment.
Okay.
So my understanding is this change that Senator French is proposing would be incorporating all the changes that you made.
That's fine then.
In 657.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So I'd move on to pass on amendment 703.
We have a motion to ought to pass on amendment 703 by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. Take a roll. Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes.
I'll move on to pass as amended.
Motion of ought to pass is amended by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator.
Senator French, we already have the ought to pass motion.
We do.
We do.
As amended.
As amended.
Okay, great. Senator Bradley,
Aye.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes. 5-0. Do I have another motion, or do you want to take it on the floor?
Motion for consent.
Senator, I was just,
Oh, I'm sorry. Go
I
ahead.
just received the text that Mr. Shire is on the phone. Could we
Tell me
check?
it's a day late, $1 short.
Mr. Chairman, it's your committee to run. I just wanted to give you this information.
Thank you.
All right, I'll move consent.
We have a motion for consent from Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes. Thank you very much. Moving on,
Senator French, who do you want to take the bill out?
Senator Gannon can take it out. We have two more FNs I'd like to do. Let's take up Senate Bill 136. The minimum wage bill we just heard today.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would move on to pass.
Well, I would expect that.
I'll second.
We have a motion about to pass by Senator Susie, seconded by Senator Kavanaugh. Any discussion?
Yes, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I was waiting to get some additional information for you regarding your questions about the federal poverty level. So for 2021, the federal poverty guidelines by person or household qualify for everything for one person household at $12,880, two-person household, $17,420, and then it continues. For advanced premium tax credits and cost sharing reductions, you can qualify for a subsidy if you make up to 4 times the federal poverty level, which
That'd be 52,000.
Mhm.
Okay.
And the information I have regarding the minimums for the ACA subsidy for a household of 1 person, 12,750 for a 2-person household, 17,240. So as you can see, the numbers are pretty low. I do have some more information coming. We're just moving along pretty quickly. So I hope to
Yeah, I'm
provide.
sorry we have to get these out today, Senator.
Well, and you only had the hearing today, so.
I know.
Not my fault.
Not my fault. Thank you. Any other discussion? So we have a motion of to pass, Senator Bradley?
Senator Susie made that motion, right?
Right.
Yeah. Are you calling the roll?
I'm calling the roll.
No.
Senator Susie?
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Senator Gannon?
No.
And Senator French says no. Do I have another motion?
I will move in expedient.
I have a motion of ITL by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. Senator Bradley?
Yes.
Senator Susie?
No.
Senator Kavanaugh?
No.
Senator Gannon?
Yes.
Senator French says yes. Who'd like to take that out?
I'm
I'll take
happy
it
to
out.
do it. I'll do it.
You good? Take it? Okay. And the last FN bill I'd like to go over is Senate Bill 126. Senator Bradley, have you got more information on that yet?
So, is Senator Perkins Quokka on the call? Can you bring her up?
Let's see. Oh, there she is. Senator Perkins Quokka, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Yes, hello, committee members. I'm here.
So my understanding, and I've been getting a lot of emails and texts today from Dawn McKinney, who represents New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and Nick Norman, who represents the Landlord Association. And I believe that Elliot Berry is on the Zoom from New Hampshire Legal Assistance, and Mr. Norman is on the Zoom. But I think that, and I guess this is by way of a question of you, Senator Perkins, you have an agreed upon amendment, and I don't know if we've seen that amendment or if it's come out of Legislative Services yet.
Here. We have it.
Oh, good. Great.
Dewey Cam, is that the correct amendment? Because there was 0324S and then there's one from this morning. So do we have
The one from this morning came out probably about 5 minutes ago or so.
Wonderful. Okay. Okay, so I'm available to answer questions on that amendment, or I can speak to it, Senator Bradley, whatever is helpful.
Could you post that one, Cameron? Bring it up.
Yep. So this is 0719S.
I'm also going to put it in the OneDrive. I didn't realize we had just gotten it, so.
So just to be clear, this would replace the 2 previous amendments?
This should replace the previous amendments. Yes, Senator Susie. I haven't seen it yet, so I'm just hedging my response while I look at it, but that's the intent.
So, it might be appropriate, Mr. Chairman, if Nick Norman is on, and he obviously can see it on the screen now, just to make sure that this is the agreed upon amendment, and Elliot Berry, then I'd be really pleased to move forward with this bill. I understand, and maybe Senator Perkins Cuoco can answer this. I understand that Ani Malachi, the executive director of the New Hampshire Human Rights Commission, also had an amendment that's agreed upon on section 3.
Yes, Senator Bradley. So I just want to confirm that having seen all of our new amendment 0719S, this is a correct amendment to replace 0324S. I do understand this to be agreed upon language between Mr. Norman and his constituents and Elliot Berry from New Hampshire Legal Assistance. And I do understand that there's a small amendment to part 3 that's also agreed upon between the parties.
That here, bring that down, will you, Cameron? Is Mr. Norman in the audience? Yeah, I don't see it
Yes,
here.
I can bring him in. Mr. Norman, if you could please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm here. I've been watching.
Have you been able to see this amendment?
A little bit. It's been scrolling by, so what I need to do is to have it scrolled to the top. And I've got the agreed upon side by side, so I can just look through it quickly while you're discussing something else.
Okay, if you would. So part 3 is not in here at all, is it?
It's not in this amendment, Chairman. I think it was separately submitted.
Okay.
It's an amendment 0562S, looks like.
So why don't, if Mr. Chairman, if we can let Mr. Norman and Mr. Berry just comment on them, and then we can move to the next one. Does that make sense?
It does to me.
Cameron, can you scroll down to show part 2? That's it, stop there. That's very good. It's exactly what Elliot and our group agreed to
Okay, great.
in part 1.
And part
And
2?
part 2 is fine.
Any questions, Senator Bradley?
No.
Senator, can you hear me? Yeah, I just want to say that we're very pleased with the amendment as well.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
So what's your pleasure?
I would move on to pass on the bill.
Senator Susie, before we get there, oh, you're moving on to pass on the bill. So then we can
discuss
the amendment to part 3. Perfect. I'll second that.
So we have amendment of ought to pass on Senate Bill 126 by Senator Susie, seconded by Senator Bradley. Senator Bradley, you had comments?
Yeah, I mean, we've moved on to pass now, so I think that we can move on to pass on the amendment that we just had on the screen, which I believe was 719. Is that correct? Yeah, so I'll move on to pass on amendment 719.
Second.
Seconded by, motion of ought to pass by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Susie on amendment 719. 19S. Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes also.
All right, so now if we
Now-
could bring up the amendment on part
562S.
3, yeah, 562, that'd be great. Hold on.
As Senator Staub would say, there's too many words.
Mhm.
Senator, Senator French, I see Elliot Berry has his hand raised. Do you want to allow him to speak while I keep scrolling? There's 4 more pages of amendment.
Sure, go ahead.
Elliot, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to point out, if I could, this looks like a huge amendment. It is remarkably similar. It's very stripped down from the initial SB 126, and it's very similar to what's in the human RSA 354A today. There are some changes that, again, pursue the goal of achieving substantial equivalence with the federal law so the Human Rights Commission can enforce federal law and get paid for doing it.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of this statute is substantively identical to the current law.
Great. It just keeps it all right in New Hampshire, correct?
Correct.
That's what I thought. Okay, great. Thank you.
Nick Norman has his hand raised. Do you want him to speak?
Why not?
Mr. Norman, you can unmute yourself.
Okay, we were in communication with Commissioner Ani Malachi, and she produced another amendment which addressed our concerns, which is not included in what we're looking at. So in her latest amendment, which it sounds like you have not seen or has not gone through legislative services, the portion 354-A:15A, complaint procedures, was stricken out.
Where's that?
And in this version that we're looking at, that provision was not stricken out. That was the landlord's concern. Not the whole section, but there was a piece in it that was of concern. So for quickness, she just struck the whole section.
So which section was struck out on that?
354-A:15 -A or A, complaint procedures. So you probably need to scroll up. Okay, that's B.
Down.
No, I think you're probably needing to go higher. There, this section, starting at page 8.
So they struck the whole thing?
They struck the entire part of 354-A:15A, complaint procedures, all the way down through Roman 3, Roman 4, Roman 5, Roman 6, Roman 7, Roman 8, Roman 9, Roman 10, Roman 11.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. They just struck the whole thing, Roman 14, yeah, all the way through Roman 14, including 354-A:15-B, remedies, relief sought and granted. So it was a very large amount. In fact, striking all the way to the very end, from that point to the end. The amendment that I forwarded in email to Senator Jeb Bradley this morning, just a little bit ago, when we were speaking on break, has Annie Malachi's latest amendment, which shows that struck out.
So is Miss Malachi on the Zoom by any chance?
I do not see her, but let me, I'll reach out to her really quickly.
Or, I mean, maybe Senator Perkins Quokka can, speak about what, just to verify that she wants that section out.
Is the senator still on?
Mhm.
Senator, you,
Yep,
Did you hear the question from Senator Bradley?
I'm
about-
so sorry. I did not.
So my question, Senator Perkins Quokka, is Mr. Norman indicated that I guess we'd have to go back to the top of page 8. That entire section of 354A colon 15-A complaint procedures, Ms. Malachi indicated should be stricken from the bill. Is that your understanding? And are you good with that?
If Miss Malachi is all right with it, have we checked with, I believe this is Senator Birdsall's section, right?
Yes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to discuss that with her. But if Miss Malachi and Mr. Norman are in agreement, we could do that for today and then check with Senator Birdsall between now and Thursday to see if anything further needs to be done.
I mean, I'd be okay with that because that could be a committee amendment that we strike everything from line 1 on page 8 to the end of that section, which I think brings us to the effective date, right?
That's correct. Striking from that point to the end, leaving in the effective date.
Yeah, so it'll be line
That's
37
Yeah,
on page 10.
I'd be comfortable with that, provided that we don't put it on consent so that
yeah.
if we vote and then review, then
There's a need to change that somehow. Senator Susie, you and I can do a floor amendment. Does that make sense?
yes.
Sarah French, I see someone else with their hand raised. It's Karen Susie. Do you want to allow her to speak?
Sure.
Miss Susie, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Wonderful. It's nice to see everyone today, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to this amendment. I represent the New Hampshire Manufactured Housing Association. We're the manufactured housing community owners, operators, and so forth. I just wanted to support the comments of Nick Norman. Nick and I have been working with Director Malachi on this amendment, and it is in fact true that she has stricken portion 354-A colon 15-A complaint procedures in its entirety. The reason for this is because this language proposed is more restrictive than state law. And upon review, it really was unfair to the landlords. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood the reason why it was removed.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity.
Okay, so I would move amendment 562, striking from line 1 on page 8 to line, I believe it's 37 on page 10, up to the effective date section of the bill.
I would second that motion.
You get that, Aaron? Okay. Do we have a motion to modify the amendment? All in favor, Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes. Do I have a motion on the amendment at this time?
So I'll move on to pass as amended.
So we have a motion of ought to pass as amended by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Susie. Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator French says yes. Now I need that's it, right?
You have one
That
more
does
vote. Just the ought to pass as amended vote.
And we have a motion of ought to pass as amended by Senator Susie, seconded by Senator Bradley, which we already did the other time. So Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh.
Yes.
This is a tough job, Kev. Senator Gannon
Sir.
and Senator French says yes.
We're here for you, Mr. Chairman.
And I truly appreciate all the expert assistance I have on this committee. I would like to bring Aiden Moore back on real quick, if we could. Is he still on? I'd just like some information on 125.
Yep, I can bring him in right here.
While we're waiting on him, who did you want to take out 126?
Who'd like to take it out? Senator Susie? Great, thank you.
Aiden, you should be here.
Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Senator. How are you today?
Good, good. Senator Susie had a question for you, I believe.
Good morning, Senator Susie.
Good morning, Mr. Moore. Thanks so much for joining us. We did already cast a vote, but I just wanted to ask if your agency had involvement, as Senator French said, with amendment, I think it was 705. And if you would particularly speak to the issue of the satellites and the language that's present there.
Thank you for your question, Senator.
703 is the amendment number. I apologize, Mr. Moore. I hope you have that.
I have not seen that amendment, Senator, and I must apologize. We did
Possible to put that portion up on the screen for Mr. Moore.
Mr. Moore, am I correct that you did look at 703, right?
I think that's the one we're talking about right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant 0657S was the one I think you participated in.
Yes, Senator. So that the committee is aware, we did participate in working with the New Hampshire Brewers Association. I think our testimony when the original amendment was brought by Senator Gannon is that we had some challenges with the amendment as introduced. And so in ensuing conversations, we worked to put together some language that we felt were, I guess I would call, low-hanging fruit that could be provided to the industry in their efforts to provide greater service to consumers and visitors. So we participated in drafting a document that we handed off to the industry for their, we needed to make sure that they found a sponsor if they wanted to bring this alternative amendment in. And I believe that's what we have in front of us now, but I have not seen the official version of it yet, just the draft that we worked on.
Okay. Would it be possible to scroll to the section dealing with the satellites and just ask Mr. Moore if he's seen that language?
Yes, Senator, that was part of the document. That was part of the working document that we provided. We did include.
So it's on line, starts on line, well, line 31 is the amending language, but starts on line 33.
I'm not sure I've seen this version yet, Senator.
Okay.
I believe he had seen and helped with 0657.
Okay.
I have not seen this version, Senator. I'm sorry.
Okay.
You all set, Senator Susie? Or do you have further questions of Mr. Moore?
Well, I would just appreciate, I recognize we've already taken a vote and I'm not asking to.
No, it's fine.
If if Mr. Moore, on behalf of the commission, could review this amendment before it comes to the floor next week, I would appreciate it. Just
That'd be great.
aware before the final vote, what the differences are between the amendment Senator Gannon brought forward in this one and just the position of the commission.
I'd be happy to, Senator. I've emailed Cameron asking if I could get copies of these amendments in their official form. And I'm certain he'll help me with that as soon as your session is over.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moore. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.
Yeah, thank you. So, that wraps up the FNs. I don't know, Senator Bradley, are you ready to take up your 137 while we're here?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. I think, I'd move ought to pass on. I'd move ought to pass on Senate Bill 137 and then speak to an amendment.
Great. We have a motion of ought to pass by Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. Go ahead, Senator.
All right, I would ask consideration of Amendment 700, which adds cigar bars and secondary game operators to the tipped employee, provisions in Senate Bill 137.
So we have a motion on amendment 700.
I'll move ought to pass.
Of ought to pass by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon. Senator Bradley?
Yes.
Senator Gannon?
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Senator Susie?
Yes.
Senator French says yes.
And I would thank you very much.
That was in the amendment, correct, Senator?
Correct.
Yeah, I would move ought to pass as amended.
Mm-hmm.
We have a motion of ought to pass as amended by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Gannon.
Could I?
Yes.
I did support the amendment because I recognize that there are other entities that have been created whose employees now rely on tips. So certainly agree with adding them to the mix. What I can't agree with, though, in light of what I talked about earlier today, is freezing our minimum wage, our tipped minimum wage at such a low amount. As you heard, our three neighboring states, Massachusetts is actually the lowest, but that's at $5.55, Maine at $6.08, Vermont at $5.88. It's nearly double what the wages, the tipped wages that's proposed in this legislation. So for that reason, Mr. Chairman, I can't support the bill.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Kavanaugh, you had.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Bradley, I got brought up to speed. I'm sorry, I missed the public comment on this bill. Senator Susie brought me up to speed. Would you be willing to look at something if we brought it up to an average of the other states around us to give those tip wages some kind of slight increase?
I'd certainly want to consult with the people that would impact before I can answer that question, yes or no.
And I feel the same way as Senator Susie. Freezing them at that level would be tough to go along with. But I mean, if we can give them some increase and get us maybe closer to the surrounding states, I'd be more appealing to me.
I'm cogitating for the whole world to see. You know what, Mr. Chairman, why don't we wait on executing this bill? That would give Senator Susie and Kavanaugh to do some outreach on that issue that they just brought up. So.
Sure, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That about does it for today then. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Moved by Senator Susie, seconded by Senator Bradley, second, Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator French says yes. About wraps it up for today. Any other thing anyone has on their mind?
Yeah, I move we adjourn. That's what's on my mind.
Me too. A motion to adjourn by Senator Bradley, seconded by Senator Susie. Senator Bradley,
Yes.
Senator Susie,
Yes.
Senator Gannon,
Yes.
Senator Kavanaugh,
Yes.
and Senator French says yes. Thank you all very much for your hard work today. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.